Right, I think we're going to get started now. I know that people are still coming into our virtual meeting room today, but we'll do a slow start. So very, very, very warm welcome to everyone joining. It's a good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. We have people, I think, in about 15, 16 time zones joining us today. So I'm really excited to have such a great group joining for this event. As was mentioned earlier, we do have Spanish-English interpretation today. So Elizabeth will try to speak slowly, but also please make sure to select the language you prefer and mute the other language. If you have any trouble hearing the interpretation, please write a message in the chat and we'll try to help you out. I think we're going to dive right in. So we enjoy our time together. This meeting is being co-convened by a variety of new partners. It is our first event together between the Women in Water Diplomacy Network and the Permanent Forum for Binational Waters. I'm really excited about it as we've had a growing interest in the Women in Water Diplomacy Network in the Americas. And the Permanent Forum is such a great example of longstanding cooperation in North America. With me today, co-convening is Dr. Rosario Sanchez. She is the director of the Permanent Forum, and I'm the process support lead for the Women in Water Diplomacy Network. And I'll let Rosario introduce herself a little bit more thoroughly when she takes up the slides shortly. In addition to Women in Water Diplomacy Network and the Permanent Forum for Binational Waters, we have some outstanding co-convening partners that made this special event happen today. So big thank you to the Permanent Forum's Women in Science initiative, which is a fantastic recurrent engagement that I really recommend everyone follow closely. And the Central Arizona Project, which has been really with the North American chapter of the Women in Water Diplomacy Network since we launched last year. So real thank you to the Central Arizona Project, my institute, the Environmental Law Institute, and our longstanding partner for the Women in Water Diplomacy Network, CIWI. So we are always looking to collaborate and not replicate and learn from each other's communities. So these types of partnership engagements are really important to all of us as a community to grow and expand our knowledge and networks. Today is a special day in the calendar for the Women in Water Diplomacy Network. This is one of our 3 open events of the year. We typically will do an open public engagement for International Women's Day, the International Women in Diplomacy Day, as well as an end of year meeting. So we're really thrilled that all of you could join us today for this special event. This is the 2nd annual Women in Diplomacy Day. So it's a new international day on the global calendar put forth by the United Nations. And you'll see in this slide here, the Deputy Secretary General Amina Mohammed, who was really driving the initiative of bringing more women into the diplomatic space. And really, even from the beginning, she was recognizing the importance of environment and water diplomacy as part of this important space where we need to do more to bring women into those decision-making spaces. I like to use some of these images just to remind ourselves. I think a lot of us likely have been in rooms that look a lot like this. Rooms where we're feeling quite in the minority. These are old and more recent images of some key climate and water negotiation spaces. So we have the first meeting that launched the climate change COP series, this COP27 image where there was that year, there were just 7 out of 115 women amongst the climate negotiators. And an image from the Nile, Eastern Nile negotiations from one of our network members in the Women in Water Diplomacy Network. So there's a lot more room that we all can do to make sure this space is an inclusive one that represents all of our communities. And that's really what the Women in Water Diplomacy Network is focused on. We are looking to improve gender equality in high-level decision-making around transboundary water with a focus on women's leadership. Although we do a lot of work across different inclusive priorities, our focus is on women's leadership. And we relate this engagement to peace and human security. So, which gender equality is a strong indicator of peace and human security in countries. So it's an important low-hanging fruit, as we say, to improve our dialogues. I'm just going to give like 1 minute on the Women in Water Diplomacy Network. I think there are many network members on the call right now, and they've all heard my talk on these many times. But for those of you joining us for the first time, the Women in Water Diplomacy Network was initiated in the Nile Basin in 2017. And that was our focus for the first 4 years. And CWE, our partner, together with ELI, were really driving and supporting that process. Then in 2021, the Central Asia Regional Environmental Center and the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe joined with us and initiated a Central Asia Afghanistan network in 2021. In 2022, we launched our global strategy at the World Water Week. And from there, we've been supporting and nurturing new networks development in a variety of different regions here in North America, Latin America, Southern Africa, and other parts, most recently the South Caucasus. Our global strategy helps us structure our engagement. So we're focused on empowerment activities, peer-to-peer learning, like we're going to have shortly in this session, looking for opportunities to collaborate around research, as the Permanent Forum I know is deeply engaged in, and collectively representing our priorities and objectives at major international and global water and climate policy events. So this is our global network. And just because I know there's a lot of North Americans joining us for the call, and maybe they're hearing about the Women in Water Diplomacy Network for the first time, we did just recently start a North American branch. And if you're interested in being more engaged there, please reach out. We're really excited, particularly to develop new partnerships like the one we're looking to develop further with the Permanent Forum of Binational Waters, as well as the Indigenous Women's Leadership Network, for example. You can learn lots more about the network. We have a lot of different publications and resources that are really helpful to get to know us. I won't linger too long on these. I believe Jesse is sharing some of the links to these documents in the chat. And at this point, I'll turn over to Dr. Sanchez to tell us a little bit about the Permanent Forum.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Thank you, everyone. Good morning, afternoon, good night. It is really a pleasure this morning to be here with you. Since I met with Elizabeth, I thought I was the most workaholic person in the world. And then I met her and her team, and she just went all over. So I'm very, very excited and very happy. And I know we can do a lot of things together, and we will. I mean, this is just one example. I'm very thrilled to be doing this jointly. and you know, we haven't met in person, but I know when we will, it's gonna be a bomb. So thank you, Elizabeth. Thank you to the network, to Jesse and all the team that has worked in Monse, and you will hear about them today. And our panelists today, and our facilitators that joined today. I mean, it's going to be very, very exciting moment. It has been for me. So I'm going to talk a little, just quickly a bit, what we represent. I am the director of the Permanent Forum of Binational Waters, which is a nonprofit institution that integrates around 250 experts, academics, and not just academics, NGOs as well, private sciences, public agencies that deal with water issues across the US-Mexico border. And we have a couple of initiatives, and one of them is the Woman in Science, which Montserrat is going to talk about that in a bit. But the purpose of the forum is to integrate those efforts. I mean, we have around 3,000-mile border between the two countries. So the efforts tend to be isolated, and sometimes in our voices, the different groups, the different communities that rely on shared waters are usually fragmented and unable to link with each other, not just across the border, but actually, you know, across within the same countries. So the forum was created in this sense to work together and to work on this, to strengthen the impacts of our efforts at binational level. And of course, I mean, we're trying to learn from other countries, from other border regions in the world, to try to learn from what has worked in other places in terms of water and what has not, and what is still missing. And of course, one of the most important things that is still missing all over the world is the representation of minorities, not just women, but minorities. So the forum is trying to reach those networks as Water and Diplomacy Network, to try to get those gaps filled in with representation for women and other groups as well. So that's one of the objectives. Another one, of course, is how to translate science into something that is really understandable for different types of communities, and that is really applicable and is useful. We're trying to translate, so we use the word socialized science in a way that actually percolates as an aquifer to the different scales of communities and of sectors in different sectors. So that's one of the objectives, one of the most important objectives of the forum. And of course, the third one is to highlight the work of women, scientists, women working on transboundary water issues, and not just women, also young professionals. We have two important initiatives, which is Science Talks, which try to bring out new research into the border wise arena and move forward and support those young initiatives and innovation technology brought by young professionals. And the other one, of course, is what we are talking today, is the Women Initiative, Women in Science Initiative, which is the science that is being developed by our women scientists in the border region. If you don't mind going to the next. And Monse, as I mentioned, is going to talk about more in depth for that. So what we're doing here is to learn. We want to learn what is going on in other regions of the world, and of course, at the same time, try to explore areas of communication, effective communication. Sometimes we think that we're in the border, and because we're very close, we actually communicate. Well, I think that's a big assumption. We can communicate, but the effectiveness of that communication is not really at the level of the challenges that we're facing. We need to move faster. We need to move more effectively, and we need to integrate different types of stakeholders in our borders. This is not just US and Mexico. I think we've seen that all over the world. And the forum tries to open those spaces of communication in a way that we have a safe space, right? Yeah, and the forum is that an independent organization driven by the interests of the forum itself, with no particular agenda, but to increase the resiliency of our border communities. And with that, I'm gonna hand over to Jesse and to Montserrat. Let me just quickly introduce Jesse. Jesse Ferraioli. She's a research associate at the Environmental Law Institute. She holds a bachelor's in arts in environmental studies and philosophy from Dartmouth College. She assists Elizabeth with the Women in Water Diplomacy Network and has worked on projects spanning from the use of natural infrastructure in hazard mitigation to evaluation of California's tribal consultation policies. For her senior thesis, Jessie reached the role of the U.S. Forest Service in safeguarding groundwater and cultural resources from uranium contamination in northern Arizona. And Montserrat Santibáñez from the United States, both Jessie as well. She's the new coordinator of the Women in Science Initiative of the Permanent Forum of Binational Waters. She holds a Bachelor of Arts in International Relations and Global Studies, and another one in Theater and Dance, bridging disciplines from Certificate in Human Rights and Social Justice. And she also holds a Portuguese Flagship Program Certificate from the University of Texas in Austin. She works alongside with Dr. David Eaton in the Texas Commission of Environmental Quality and the Secretaría de Medio Ambiente de Coahuila on the initial phases of the Programa Ríos Vivos in Coahuila, Mexico. Thank you, Jessie, and thank you, Montserrat, for helping us getting this set up. And I'll hand it over to you. Thank you.
Hello. Yeah, so now we would just like to get to know some of you. Thank you both for presenting, kind of orienting us to this event and the purpose of us all being here today. And for this, we'll be facilitating some fun interactive activities to get to know who is in the virtual room with us today using Slido, which you can access through your phone camera by scanning this QR code or going to this link right here. And yeah, if this isn't working, you can also just put your answers in the chat, but it'll be more fun. Try to use Slido, and I'll turn it over to Monse for our first question.
Yes. Again, thank you, Dr. Rosario, for introducing us, and welcome everybody in the room. For our first question of the day, we would like to know, where are you joining us from? I know there's people coming from all over the world, so we want to see a little bit. Okay, we got a lot of people from Washington, Arizona, Mexico City, Vienna, Brazil, Kazakhstan, different time zones. Oh, wow. Okay. Jordan. See, we have a couple people. We have some people from Guadalajara. I grew up in Guadalajara. That's fun to see. Colorado, Austria, Santa Fe, Arizona, UK. We have some people in Brooklyn, in Uganda. Well, thank you everybody for putting in your answers. I know we have people coming in very early in the morning and some people coming very late at night. So we really appreciate you taking the time of the day and to join these conversations. These conversations are so important and it is so valuable to us for you to be part of it. Um, I will now hand it over. Oh, I want to hand it over to Jesse for our next question.
So for our next question, if we can go to the next Slido, is going to be that we just want to know, what is your role in the field of water science
I
diplomacy?
am having trouble, Jesse. I don't
Oh my
know.
goodness. Okay, wait, let me. I think that if you use the link, you should be able to. I see so many people typing. Is it not showing up on the?
It's kind of like stuck on this one. Sorry, everyone.
Let me see if I can.
Um,
If it's okay if I
yeah.
share quickly.
You can share, Jess.
Okay. Is everybody seeing the screen?
Yes.
We can
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. So we'll have to scroll down a little, but yeah, so we have a lot of experience joining us from all throughout the field. Negotiators, attorneys, board members. Researchers and consultants, some folks in government, water policy advisor, some work on water data.
I love this because there are so many entry points into water diplomacy. We have academics, civil society, government, formal, informal representatives. There's really a diversity of opportunities to engage in this water science diplomacy space.
Certainly, certainly. I want to make sure I give everyone time to put in their responses. I see we have 5 participants still typing. I'm gonna stop the share for this one since I think the numbers are dwindling here. Then we'll move on to our next Slido.
Yes.
I can also share just so that, yeah, because Elizabeth, it's not working on yours, right? I'll try to do it on here. That's so weird. I'm so sorry.
As Elizabeth mentioned, I think it's fascinating that we all get to be together here in this virtual room with such a collective experience. For our next question, we would like to know how many years you've been working in the field. I know that we have some people that have been in the field for many, many years and some that are rather new. So we would like to see that to reflect on, the different entryways that we can get into working in water science diplomacy from various approaches.
A few years ago, we did an exercise like this, Monsi, where we tried to calculate how many years of experience the network member has. And
Oh,
it was
wow.
like 500. And then I stopped counting because it's just a lot of experience.
Oh, that would be so interesting to do that if we could. But yeah, no, I think it really reflects on how when we get together, we really are more, not just in quantity, but in quality and acknowledge and perspectives from from professors to like advisors to government. It all adds up.
Absolutely, absolutely. And for our final question, just so we get to know who's in the room with us today, and we can go back to the slides because this is not an interactive activity. This is just a bonus question. And that is that we would like to know, and Elizabeth, if you'd like to pull up the slides, you can, and if not, we don't have to. Like to know if there's a waterway or body of water that you feel most connected to.
And you can put this one in the chat. Minutes.
I'm just having fun with all these basins. Seeing how that is moving. I mean, oh,
But I think it's so important also to know that we have so many people that are connected to the same bodies of water, right? So that can be like connections for the future, also partnerships.
we can do a
Absolutely.
map. We can have a map of today's basins, representation of women in science.
As people keep typing in, I'm gonna thank everybody for your participation. I hope you had a little bit of fun with our interactive activities, and it's been really fascinating to see snippets of everyone's background in the room. Everyone here really does add value to the conversation. And now I will transition into the experience exchange portion between our panelists. I will hand over the mic over to Dr. Elia Tapia. She is a faculty professor at the Universidad de Sonora en Hermosillo, Mexico. Dr. Tapia holds a PhD in Arid Lands Resource Sciences and a minor degree in hydrology from the University of Arizona. She has 13 years of experience in applied hydrology, hydrogeology, climate change studies, and disaster risk assessment. She has been contributing to the United States-Mexico efforts on the Transboundary Aquifer Assessment Program for over 12 years, among other projects for private and public institutions in the United States, Latin America, and the Caribbean. She has also recently been involved in projects for the Inter-American Development Bank, including the Transboundary Regional Plan for Drinking Water, Basic Sanitation, and Solid Waste Management for the Amazon Cooperation Treaty Organization. Everyone, Dr. Elia Tapia, thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Monse. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Welcome to the Women in Water Science Diplomacy Day. My name is Elia Tapia, and I'm honored to be moderating today's sessions on the role of science diplomacy in water diplomacy. Science diplomacy can be defined as the use of scientific collaborations among nations to address common problems and build constructive international partnerships. On the other hand, water diplomacy focuses on negotiating and managing shared water resources to ensure its equitable and sustainable use. It seeks to resolve conflicts and foster cooperation over water resources. The intersection of science diplomacy and water diplomacy is really important because scientific knowledge and technological innovations are necessary in understanding and managing water resources. Through science diplomacy, countries can engage in dialogue, they can share data and expertise and collaborate on solutions to water-related challenges. This approach is essential for achieving water security, for addressing the impacts of climate change, and also for promoting peace. Today, we have the honor to hear from distinguished experts who will share their insights regarding this integration, the integration between science diplomacy and water diplomacy. Their diverse backgrounds and expertise will enrich our understanding of how these two fields can work together to address some of the most pressing water challenges of our time. Now, it is my pleasure to introduce our speakers. We can go to next slide, please. Our first speaker is Dr. America Lutz Ley, General Academic Director of Colegio Sonora in Mexico. Dr. Lutz Ley specializes in human adaptation to climate change, water security, and socio-ecological impacts of mining and agrarian extraction. With a PhD from the University of Arizona and over 35 peer-reviewed articles, that's a lot of articles, America. She brings a wealth of knowledge to the intersection of socio-ecological and political ecology approaches. Our next speaker, if we can move to the next slide, please, is Dr. Florence Grace Adongo, the Executive Director of the Nile Basin Initiative in Uganda. With 37 years of experience in the public sector and environmental resource management, Dr. Adongo has held crucial roles in Uganda's water management. She also serves as the president of an ANBO, holding advanced degrees in water management and business administration, making her a key figure in regional water diplomacy. And we are really honored to have all of the speakers. They're really, really good. And I'm really honored, like when I'm saying their bios, when I'm describing everything they have done, like I feel that I don't even deserve to be moderating this, but I'll do my best. Our next speaker is Dr. Sarah Kapnick. Oh, 1 second. We were informed that Chairwoman Rosa Long was not going to be able to join us today. That's why I'm moving to the next one. We hope to see her on future events. So our next speaker is Dr. Sarah Kapnick, the Chief Scientist of the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration in the United States. Dr. Kapnick advances science and technology policy with a strong background in climate science and economics. Her experience spans roles as a senior climate scientist at JP Morgan and work on climate prediction and water security at NOAA's Geophysical Fluid Dynamics Laboratory. Joining us from Turkmenistan, if we can go to next slide, thank you. We have Surey Sharieva, a junior researcher at the Leibniz Institute for Agricultural Development. Surey specializes in sustainable agriculture in Central Asia, focusing on gender dynamics, crop diversification, and water management. She's also mentor to female students and collaborates with Turkmen institutions on agricultural economics. Lastly, we have Dr. Yolanda Lopez Maldonado, an indigenous Maya woman from Mexico, and a science diplomat specializing in the social dimensions of water conservation. Dr. Lopez Maldonado has worked with UNESCO and the IUCN, promoting the integration of Western and indigenous science. She holds a PhD in human geography from the Ludwig Maximilians Universität in München, Germany. Thank you, all of our speakers, for being here today. We look forward to your valuable insights on the crucial role of science diplomacy in water diplomacy. Now we're going to move into our experience exchange session, where we will delve deeper into the role of science diplomacy in water diplomacy through a series of questions directed to each of our panelists. This session is designed to provide an opportunity for our speakers to share their personal experiences, their challenges, and best practices, as well as to discuss the impact of their work in this critical field. Each panelist is going to have 4 minutes to respond the question. And after we are done with the panel question, we will be receiving questions from the answers. So the first question is going to be for Dr. America Lutzley. Thank you for joining us today. I'm going to start with you, asking if you could please describe your daily responsibilities and your involvement in water diplomacy and science. Additionally, could you share key challenges you have encountered and best practices in science-based policy decision-making that could be valuable for both young and current professionals in the field?
Perfect. Thank you so much, Elia. Thank you very much for being here, everyone. I am very honored. I am also like overwhelmed in a good way because of this excellent group of people that we have today for talking to us about this. And I am just very, very grateful for this opportunity. I have been a researcher professor for the last 7 years in Mexico, studying human dynamics related to climate change adaptation, water security, water political ecology, and feminist political ecology. I focus on Northwest Mexico, but I also include the Southwest United States and Northwest Mexico transboundary area. As a young researcher in the borderlands, at a very early stage of my career, it was not surprising for me that it will involve some kind of transboundary collaboration. And I have been involved in local forms of water and science diplomacy. I think my first approach to this came around like 15 years ago, maybe, when I graduated from my master program in social sciences. At that time, I started collaborating as a research assistant in a project titled Information Flows and Policy, the use of climate diagnostic and cyclone prediction for adaptive water resources management in Western North America. That was a project developed at the University of Arizona, and it involved people from both sides of the border. And as a young student just graduating from the master program, I helped in the project with translations, with field work, and I started kind of realizing how important it is for our regions to think about this transboundary nature of water. Water has no political boundaries. It is a reality that gives us the opportunity to actually collaborate. So later on in 2012, it was a long time ago, I won't say more, a long time ago, I obtained a scholarship for going to the United States and study an environmental program, Arid Lands Resource Science PhD. I was a colleague of Elia there, and I met this group of amazing people. I realized that women were more and more being part of these environmental efforts in the transboundary region. So that was my second experience. I was fortunate to get a scholarship from the Fulbright program that is actually one of the first efforts for science diplomacy between Mexico and the United States and the United States and other countries. At that time, I also started collaborating in a project that involved understanding the transboundary dynamics of the San Pedro River in Arizona and the San Miguel River on the Mexican side. It was about understanding what makes resilient an arid region riparian corridor, the rivers in the transboundary arid region. That involved a lot of transboundary collaborative networks, science policy network. And after that, when I finished the PhD and came here and became a researcher and professor, I kept involvement in international transboundary scientific collaborations, virtual water transitions, and all kinds of things related to transboundary water. Because I am almost out of time, I will say the three challenges that I have found is we have been gaining representation, but women were not in these groups of binational collaborations until very recently. The second one is the role of asymmetries across the border. And the third one is the priority of natural and engineering sciences in the past in terms of region binational collaborations. And now this is something that has been changing and giving space to other disciplines, inclusiveness to people from all backgrounds and women. And also the asymmetries are still there, but we have been working on that, trying to use these networks of collaborations to build on those asymmetries. And I think I am running out of time. Thank you, Elia.
Thank you, America, for your valuable insights. They will certainly serve as a guide for young and not so young professionals seeking for a career in water resources policy, transboundary studies, and now social and ecological studies. Oh, sometimes the role of that. I could stay here like for an hour talking to America about representation. Last month, I went to a meeting. It's because we are from Sonora. I went to a meeting about Sonora water planning. It was a panel, 8-hour panel, and people talking about plans, what to do, water security, and there wasn't a single woman talking. And of course I had to raise my hand and say, why is all men in here? We have so much to say. So these are some of the examples or the challenges that we encounter, at least in this part of the world. And I think that they're similar in other places. We have representation from different places around the world. So now that I'm going to go over some of the questions, we are going to see like the different perspectives from different women in water diplomacy. So thank you, Dr. Lutz, for your insights. Now I'm going to have to move to Florence Grace Adongo. I'm sorry that I'm going too fast because I know that we only have 30 minutes. Then we can have another coffee break and keep talking. Or I think we're going to have some time for some open discussion, etc. So I'm moving to Dr. Florence Grace Adongo. I would like to pose some questions to you. We know that you're the executive director of the Nile Basin Initiative. Clearly an organization deeply engaged in water diplomacy and science diplomacy. Could you please describe your daily responsibilities and your involvement in water diplomacy and science? Do you have advice for others working in science water decision-making intersection that would be valuable for both young and current professionals in the field? It's like the same, but then I have a modification here. How does your participation in a network like the Women in Water Diplomacy Network contribute to water science diplomacy?
Thank you very much, Elia. I hope you can hear me.
Yes, we can hear you well.
Okay, thank you very much. And you can see my face.
We can see you, yes.
Thank you for inviting me to this very august house of professional ladies. And from Entebbe, yes, I am the executive director of the Nile Basin Initiative. The Nile, as you know, is the longest river in the world. Crisscrosses 11 countries, and it covers 10% of African continents, with a quarter of the population residing in the Nile Basin. So there are a number of challenges because of diversity in cultures and the different areas. The Nile Basin Initiative was established to bring the countries together and to provide a platform for cooperation so that the benefits accruing from the Nile can be shared with all the countries on a win-win basis. As the executive director of the Nile Basin Initiative, I'm the 11th executive director, but I'm the second lady executive director in the last 20 years. My responsibilities are focused around strategic leadership and management, giving direction to the Nile Basin Initiative Secretariat, overseeing programs and projects, supervising various planning, implementation, and monitoring, but also ensuring that I have adequate stakeholder engagement, because there are many stakeholders in this basin, both within the basin, but also outside the basin, building strategic partnership that can foster relationship that can allow cooperative management and development of the resources, not only for now, but also for the future. I'm also involved in scientific and technical guidance of the institution overseeing the various scientific work, technology that is used to understand the river and the basin, and as well as provide this scientific information to inform decision-making and policy development. I also take a charge in communication and public relations. I'm the primary spokesperson for NBI, and also looking into capacity building and knowledge management, information sharing among countries to build confidence and trust among themselves so that they are able to share and also plan collectively and also have joint projects and programs. So because of time, I will not go so much. My direct involvement, of course, as I've told you, is about facilitating transboundary cooperation among the countries, providing a platform that they can dialogue and engage in different aspects, also exchange information and data, mainly scientific information, to inform their different plans and actions, and also look at mechanisms for bringing in new ideas that can inform new policy areas, as well as capacity building in water science and water management. Now, as far as the advice is concerned in this area, science, as we all know, requires a lot of accuracy and reliability in whatever is generated. So first of all, you have to be actually qualified in that area, but also as much as possible, be practical, be able to have experience on the ground that can translate your science into practice and translate practice into policy and action on the ground. So as part of these best practices, it requires a lot of engagement with others, different disciplines, because water cannot be described by one specific scientific area. You need hydrologists, you need ecologists, you need economists, social scientists. There are many, many other areas. So there must be a forum for this. And also I've talked about stakeholder engagement. In the Nile Basin Initiative, we have different ways of engaging stakeholders, not only through meetings and workshops, but we have triennial Nile Basin Development Forum, which is a conference that brings the different experts together to share information and knowledge, and also inform on innovation and technology. We have other areas, but because of time, I'll just be moving very fast. In terms of benefit, you know, participating in the engagements where we look at science and water diplomacy is very important, especially for the young professionals, because it builds on your profession. It enhances networking and collaboration. It is also a form of mentorship and support in different areas. And it also increases, you know, visibility and recognition, especially when you work with those who already have the experience. You are able to build and the skills and develop yourself into a very prominent and strong leader, as well as be able to prepare yourself to influence policies at different levels. But at also personal level, it empowers and gives confidence to the young, and also builds on the professionalism that you acquire from these other exposure that you get. So this is a very important opportunity for young professionals. It also provides opportunity for collaborative projects and research in different areas. Now the engagement from the women in water diplomacy, and how it contributes to science diplomacy. No, the experience that I've had and the exposure that I've had is that through the diplomacy, there is opportunity for fostering collaboration and strengthening network, partnership, as the question was, it is an area that you can share experience, but also look into gaps that are there and discuss possibilities of filling those gaps so that we can have sustainable management and development of water resources that involve everybody, that is holistic, and therefore we shall be able to make more contribution. And also we have seen peer-to-peer learning in our women in water diplomacy. So the scientists and the science should be able to bring evidence on the ground that can inform, but also identify gaps that can be researched upon. And also we use that opportunity to mentor others and also see how others have resolved conflicts and peace building in different areas. Because of the short time, I think I'll stop here. Thank you very much for listening to me.
Thank you so much, Dr. Adongo, for your reflections. It is amazing the work that you and your team have been carrying out through the Nile Basin initiative. We see a lot of challenges.
The sound is not working.
Oh. Can you hear me now? Hello? Yes? Okay. Sorry. All right. Well, thank you, Dr. Adongo, for your reflections. It is amazing the work that you and your team have been carrying out through the Nile Basin Initiative. We see a lot of challenges, but also a lot of opportunities for collaboration, especially regarding advances in science, multidisciplinary approaches, and as a tool to inform policy and decision making. So thank you so much for your insights. Now we are going to move on to Dr. Sarah Kapnick. I would like to talk a little bit about your current role at NOAA. What are some best practices and experiences in fostering trust and support for science-based policy decision making that you have seen or used? Additionally, how do NOAA's prediction and projection methods differ, and why are both essential for understanding and preparing for future climate and weather events? And in what ways does NOAA scientific monitoring contribute to our ability to make accurate predictions about future environmental changes?
Thank you so much for having me. So as NOAA's chief scientist, I work on a daily basis with interdisciplinary teams across all of NOAA to strategize and facilitate research on all sorts of different subjects: climate change, heat, health, marine carbon dioxide removal, ocean observations, a wide thing related to all of our science. And with this, we're trying to develop science-based policy recommendations and draft technical reports and policy briefs that can support the policy that needs to be taking place. So my work also engages with policymakers directly, parties of interest and international partners, leading our delegations to events around the world to promote sustainable practices and resolve climate change issues. So this can involve organizing and participating in meetings and workshops with local communities, with government agencies, and also with international organizations. And so key challenges that you asked me to provide are: one, data accessibility and integration. So NOAA's data is open access through FAIR principles, and the point of that is that other people that can have access to it and use it, and also understand how we use it and how we recombine it, so that can be replicated. And we produce information both domestically but also internationally. And part of the reason we also have the open plans domestically is we make sure that it can support the private sector in the US, but also that information and how we do it is then leveraged by our partners worldwide. And sometimes we also have collaborations either bilaterally or with WMO or with other groups globally to make sure that the knowledge that we produce and the methodologies can also be used around the world. Number two, a challenge is bridging science and policy. So we really need strong communication channels between scientists and policymakers. And that requires translating scientific findings into clear and actionable recommendations. We can't just put our most technical people in front of policymakers and expect that science will suddenly magically go into what needs to be done. We need to actually make it actionable and help people understand how you use this information. Number three, the other big challenge is really ensuring community participation. So implementing inclusive decision-making processes requires that we bring the relevant partners into the room to be able to use that information, including marginalized communities, and ensuring that all the voices are heard to figure out how do you build solutions that are actually usable locally, because if they're built in an erudite fashion of just thinking at a very high level and then you implement it, it should work everywhere. We really find in our community engagement that if you don't do that, that it does not actually have the ability to last for a long time, and particularly in water management policies where it's such local issues and they're tied to social issues, financial issues, economic development issues. You really need to bring the whole community and think through how things get implemented. Otherwise, they will not, and there needs to be flexibility and understanding that the science may also change to be able to create these issues. On the points of NOAA's prediction and projection methods and how they differ. So on the prediction side, for us, that is forecasts of weather out to seasonal predictions, which we define in the United States out to 2 years. So our predictions provide immediate and actionable weather forecasts or seasonal outlooks, and they help manage both daily operations of how you need to respond to the weather that you have outside, but also the emergency response when you are in extreme scenarios that can have impacts. And then also short-term planning for seasonal predictions, as you know events are starting to unfold, so you can prepare or you can be ready to deploy assets to be able to reduce the risks when they occur. So examples of this, right now we're in a hurricane season. And so we have people prepared for our seasonal outlook where we've said that we expect a really strong season in the Atlantic. It's actually the strongest we've ever forecasted for the season. And so we are working with all the partner countries in the Caribbean and as well as the United States to be ready for hurricane season. We do that every year, but we're on particularly high alert right now. Once those events start unfolding, and we have one that is in the Gulf right now, coming through Mexico up to the United States, we put out the alert that's forecasted, and we have expectations for how much water is going to be falling from the sky, and particularly after the drought, we have expectations for flooding in many places. We've already seen that in Mexico, and we're seeing it in the beginning in Texas and Louisiana, US, happening right now. On the projection side, however, projections have been developed over the decades to produce understanding of long-term climate change, and those are used for risk and opportunity analysis for how to respond, long-term infrastructure, what to do with them, but they're not yet operationalized for use in the same way that our weather and seasonal outlooks are. We're funding money actually to figure out how to produce more regular and operationalized projections, but right now they're mainly used pulling together all the projections from all the models around the world to try and produce the best state of knowledge of what the future holds. And that is done in NOAA through our R&D efforts, which then translate into different products where people can find that information, figure out and look through what it means for what the future holds. And the main way that we do this is by coordinating through the National Climate Assessment in the United States for planning in the US of how to expect what is going to happen in the future in the United States, and then what that means for policymakers and stakeholders for how they should be responding, and then also contributing to the assessments through the IPCC process, through the CMIP process, putting in that data, but then also the reports that are produced as an assessment. But I see that evolving. I see an evolution of how we operationalize climate projections going forward as people recognize that they need to be regularly dealing with these problems, and that will lead to changes in how policy is done. And I think I'm over time, at time, so I will end it there and do any questions later. Thank you.
All right, perfect. Thank you, Dr. Kapnick, for your responses. As you mentioned, it's really important that the produced information is used, and in order for it to be used, it has to be shared and it has to be translated. Sometimes we think that the hard thing is the modeling, the physical and natural science behind the models, right? And don't get me wrong, it is hard. Indeed, but delivering a message that can be used to promote informed decision making, that's also a hard thing to do. And we're really thankful that you are working on that as well, along with your team. So thank you so much for your contributions. Now I'm going to move to our next panelist. We have today Surey Sharieva. And I would like to talk a little bit about your experience on the 2024 Duchenne Forum. How does participation at such networking and knowledge exchange opportunities support your development as a young professional in the field of water science diplomacy? And do you have any tips for maximizing engagement and impact at events like the Duchenne Forum?
Yeah,
Sorry
thank you very
for
much.
mispronouncing.
Can you hear me right? Yeah, so I will just say not Suray, but Surai. So it's difficult to pronounce for.
Yes, I was gonna like my last line was, please, I'm sorry for doing this. I did practice though, but
Yeah, it's fine. So earlier, like before this event, I was a bit excited because like, okay, what I'm gonna talk, because I'm very new for this network. I'm like attending since March of this year, and it's like only 3 months. I'm a member of this network, and how I gonna do and what I do, how we explain. But now after all of our exercises, it's like, see, it's more friendly environment. So it's really nice to be here and like just talk and yeah, more calmer, right? So can you hear me? I think my internet connection is a bit problematic, but if there's something, please let in chat. So the thing is, what I wanted to say, I like just give short background. So I'm from Turkmenistan. It's a very highly conservative and patriarchal country, and in the world, there will be very few female researchers who is doing the PhD or a postdoc. And if you know some other Turkmens, you're very lucky. We are in top, who knows, 0.1% maybe of our country. And especially being a female, that's a very challenging in our society, because women are married after graduating high school or graduating bachelor's degree, and they don't have this opportunity as I had. Secondly, the thing is, what I wanted to say, we have a huge, and not in Turkmenistan, but also all Central Asian country, we have a age-based bias. So we need gain respect from older people to be able to be professional in our environment. Even though we have a higher education from very Western universities, when we go back to our societies, they will not respect us because of age. We are young, we are not experienced in the eyes. And now I will probably bring this discussion a bit back forward, what our colleagues telling, and tell the real, maybe the challenges for being a woman in this environment, because what I also experienced in a way, yeah, and not right now I will tell about like Central Asia, not necessarily Kazakhstan and Kyrgyzstan, but other 3 countries. So I see here we have a Kazakh and Kyrgyz colleagues. Please don't take it personal. I'm just the southern part of the region when I mean Central Asia. So yes, it was amazing to be in Dushanbe water process. It's my first experience, diplomatic experience in the Central Asia. And that's why I was like, okay, I'm going there. I will be a Turkmen representative, and will meet a lot of nice people. Definitely that was happening. But and there was a huge Turkmen delegate there, like around 15, 20 people. And only one person was a woman who was from parliament, and the 2 others were from UN agency, the rest of men. All ages. So that's what's happening in Central Asia, yes. And in the region, they have also gender equality things right now happening in the governments, because there's a UN SDG challenges, like there should be gender equality, and these countries opening the quota for women just feel this quota, but not really respecting and listening them when it comes to policy making or decision making. And when you see in these meetings, the women, they are just filling the gaps. It's not really, they are professionals of their field, yeah. So and this Dushanbe water process, also when the informal meetings, I was meeting the other Turkmen delegates or other Central Asian delegates, and in informal conversations, they would also give me advices about my marriage. I should be a good daughter-in-law. I should how to make a tea for my mother-in-law or something like this kind of things. And each time I had a feeling that I have to show that I'm professional, even though I'm young. I have to show that I'm professional. Yeah, like to how to say, to show myself that I'm in equal position as you, even, no matter that I'm a young, no matter that I'm a woman, I'm in same, like, it's not happening with a Western society, but it's mainly when you go to the region, you feel that pressure a lot. But besides of that, I was very surprised to see a lot of young people engaged in water challenges, and that they are actively raising their voices. And in this process, there was several sessions where UNICEF and UN Women organized separately for women in water management and youth in the water management. And I was so much surprised to see young people there. My advice would be definitely already Sarah mentioned about like clear communication. As a scientists, we live in our own bubble, right? And policymakers, they live in their own bubble. And as a scientist, we are very slow, and policymakers, they want results now and today. So in this case, we have to learn how to clear communicate and, for example, explain what you are doing your research in 2 sentences. That was also a good experience for me to exercise these communication skills in this Dushanbe water process, and to be able to speak. So of course we say we have to speak, but exactly to speak in their language. So that's one of main, I think, examples, right? Tips, like to be able to clear communicate what we want, how we want, to able them listen, scientists in the end of the day. Also, like networking, that was one of important thing. I printed bunches of business cards and gave it to everyone there. So just to know here someone is existing and doing this work. Yeah, so that's one of main kind of tips from my side, I think. Yeah, I will stop here, like, and we can discuss later the other things.
All right. Well, thank you so much for sharing your history with us today. I would like to add that both the Women and Water Diplomacy Network and the Permanent Forum of Binational Waters, they serve as a safe space for raising our voices, science diplomacy and water diplomacy voices from young and not so young professionals, understanding that they represent the future, innovation, experience, and wisdom. So thank you so much. I'm really grateful for having you here and hear about your experience. I know that the strength of these groups, or groups like this, is that they encompass different type of professionals and points of view, because the more we are, the more we can help. So thank you so much for your insights. Now I'm going to move to Dr. Yolanda Lopez Maldonado. If you can hear me, I don't see you. That's why I'm like, where are you? It is well known, Dr. Yolanda, it is well known that it is science that fits policy making processes, but we are often referring to Western science. What challenges have you encountered in influencing policy from an indigenous perspective?
Thank you very much, Elia. Gracias. Merci beaucoup. And also thank you to all other panelists and the people that are here with us. I want to be very brief in relation to your question, because we have been listening different challenges that women face in terms of joining this diplomacy path. So I just want to bring my experience as an indigenous woman, as an indigenous scientist, and also navigating this science diplomacy in water related issues. So I hope you can hear me, and if not, please let me know. So we live in a dynamic planet that is shaped by our processes, like human and natural processes. And I believe that it's politically and ethically correct to allow other knowledge systems to contribute with the understanding of water processes. And this is mainly because we know that water circulates within this beautiful planet and and transforms to different forms. And this water flows from local to global and from global to local. So it is logical to think that we need understanding of the water cycle at global level, but also understandings at local or in situ. And it's the work I have been mainly doing. And essentially, I'm trying to bring back the knowledge of indigenous peoples and local communities in understanding complex processes on Earth and how indigenous peoples have been understanding and monitoring natural phenomena. So I can give you a few examples. So for example, if I ask to the audience how long we have had, for example, NASA, which is the main observatory of our planet, or NOAA as well, how long we have been having those institutions, less than 70 years, less than 100 years. But the knowledge of indigenous peoples about complex processes on Earth, including some of the components of the hydrological cycle, has been here for millennia, over millennia. And I think this is something that we really need to start looking at, not in terms of something that complements scientific endeavors, but something that is valid and accurate and as precise as the Western science we have. So for example, I have the example of the Mayas of Yucatan, which is the area which I came from. So the Mayas were very good engineers. They were very good mathematicians. They were able to predict natural phenomena, to understand how the water or the hydrological cycle worked at local level. They were very good at, I don't know, building different slopes in order to direct water to some places to others. They were able to build and to flourish in a place where water was scarce and where water was an important aspect for their survival. And I think this is something that we can learn from other groups around the world. So we have, for example, indigenous peoples living on the Arctic regions. They are very good in understanding snow or cryospheric processes. So they are good at providing information that works at local level on different aspects that can, I'm not saying complement, but are necessary to build a better planet for all of us. And there are different examples in different places, literature, scientific literature, but also there are different organizations, indigenous peoples organizations, working on trying to recover and revitalize and restore such information, which is critical for the survival of our civilization. So essentially, this is the message I want to convey and to bring to all of us. And if you have any other question, I will be very happy to respond. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Yolanda, for your contributions. I'm really thankful that we're hearing more and more about indigenous knowledge and its application to science and decision making. These voices were, let's say, silenced for a long time, but now we're seeing that they're coming back. So I'm really happy to be able to listen to that, because they do provide valuable lessons. So thank you so much for your contributions. And I've been thinking, what could happen if we have these 5 women in science working together in a project? Think about it. It's like my mind is exploding. Like, I'm hearing different points of view, different lessons. I think that together, like, it would be like great for even our planet. But I'm gonna have to move to the next phase. We do have like 1 minute to the open Q&A session, unless somebody gives me additional time. But now I'm going to open the floor for additional questions from the public. Let me see, do we have any hands? Additional questions that we have for our panelists?
I think we have time for 1, 2 questions.
Yeah.
Nobody has a burning question? Adanish?
I have one, but I'm gonna let the audience to take it over.
I think Adanish is raising her hand, Elia.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Good morning, good evening, and good afternoon. Nice to meet you. My name is Adanich. I'm working at the Nile Basin Initiative. My question is, especially all presentation was very nice, and the experience sharing platform or network like this is very interested, and it helps us even to learn each other. So thank you for facilitation, the organizing team, especially Elizabeth. We have been together for last 6 years. So my question is for Dr. Yolanda. So if she have some or publishable or published documents or journals related with science and indigenous knowledge, because as she mentioned, indigenous knowledge, they know exactly, even because of the life experience. So that means it helps us to know the indigenous knowledge plus the scientist part. The combination is create better world. So if she have some published documents to share with us, thank you. I submit.
May I go, Elia? Yes, okay. Thank you, Dr. Adanesh. Yes, I do have publications, and I think there is plenty of literature on this topic on the internet, so I can share. I have built a personal database with information about how indigenous peoples and local communities are very good in understanding complex processes on Earth. But also, I just want to emphasize that there is important to bring indigenous knowledge with indigenous science with Western science, but also because we need to take into account the cultural and spiritual significance of water for the majority of the groups, of the indigenous groups. We cannot treat water as something that is just a good for us. So we need to take care of water, and I also have information on this regard. So if you would like to keep in touch with me after this event, I will be very happy to discuss more and to share information on that.
Thank you.
All right, we do have one question on the chat. It says, what role can citizen science play in extreme events management? And I think this question can go for Dr. Kapnick. If you can please help us to respond this.
Yeah, I'll respond quickly. Citizen science is really important, and in particular, we have been creating programs around how do we gather the information that we need in communities. And that can take the form on the water side for water quality, having low cost sensor technology that is then out there and sent out for citizen scientists to be collecting and then put into the network, which then we can realize when there's harmful algal blooms at local locations really rapidly. It's also increasingly being used for important community data gathering, like for heat, understanding of heat in communities. We have actually a program that we do annually where we go out and people get sensors and they go on their cars and their bikes and walking around in cities to be able to get information on heat around the city. And then all that information is collected to build out the resiliency plans for the cities. We could not do that. We don't have enough of the workforce, but hundreds of people show up to be able to do this and engage in it with the communities developing that out and then figuring out where we need to have the interventions to be able to make sure people are resilient to heat, which of water and access to cold water is a really important piece of that. And increasingly, I think as we figure out how to build adaptation and resiliency plans in communities, citizen science will be a really important piece of that to make sure that we collect all the information that you need at a hyper local scale. Over.
Thank you. Thank you. We do have another question. We have here, because water data is often so sensitive, how would you suggest we incorporate water data diplomacy into our conversation? And this is important. Sometimes it is a matter of even national security or so. And you're already here, but I don't know if you can add to that, Dr. Kapnick, or anyone else from the panel participants.
I will say that I've been a part of also soft diplomacy groups from the science side of trying to generate knowledge and information in different places around the world, and sharing both observations but also the modeling it's really important to be able to build the models that actually work to know how to manage the water resources. And so there's a need for building of trust and working towards some openness of that data to be able to produce it. And that's part of the reason why we produce all of our models in open ability. And I find that because in the United States, in parts of the US, we have a lot more networks of information, we can improve the models here, and then people can take it and use it elsewhere. And often we get phone calls with requests for help as people are trying to set things up when originally the data might not be available, but then they ask to work towards making things available and working together. So I think understanding that the models and the ability to know what happens in the future is only improved with openness of data is often what leads to more open data in some places.
Thank you. Thank you so much for your answer. I was wondering if anyone else from the expert panel would like to add something about data sharing and sensitivity, just data sharing and sensitivity regarding water policy.
Maybe I can comment on that, Elia. So especially for indigenous peoples or for indigenous women doing diplomacy, is very crucial to work this aspect, because usually indigenous peoples are seen as environmentalists, and sometimes it's good to have this process of environmentalism to fight for the rights of nature. But if you don't bring science-based evidence to those policy or global arenas in which decisions are made, is usually the policymakers, they don't consider your voice as something that is heavy, I will say. So you really need to bring this aspect of science diplomacy to navigate this sphere with professionalism, speaking the words that policymakers they understand. Because, for example, as an indigenous Maya woman, if I start speaking about Mother Earth, a lot of policymakers and hydrologists, they will say, oh, this is something esoteric or something like this. And I have been in that situation. I think it's important to give the voice to minority groups. And yeah, I think it's crucial for women doing this type of job.
No, thank you so much, Yolanda, for your contributions. We do have more questions on the chat, but it's time to wrap up. We will follow up with materials and with a summary of the events. And if we do get more and more questions, we can just think of another session for keep talking about this. Now we're gonna move with our schedule, and I'm going to call for Brenda Burman, General Manager of the Central Arizona Project. She's gonna be helping us with some closing reflections for this event. And thanks again to all of the panelists. It was an honor to be here with you today. Thank you.
Do you want to do the picture first, or should I jump in?
Brenda will do it after.
Okay.
But stay on, everyone.
First of all, this is such an incredible group. For me, it's starting my morning. Arizona, kind of West Coast time in the United States, and just amazing. It's just so invigorating to hear all of what you're going through, your experiences. It's a huge honor to celebrate our second anniversary of International Day of Women in Diplomacy. I would love to hear about who managed to get that to happen. I think that would be a great story and someone to have on a panel. I am so impressed from all the different countries and regions of the world that we represent. But I think we're all here because we are committed to our natural resources, right? We're committed to our communities and their ability to access those natural resources. And that comes from the heart, right? I saw some other U of A people listed in here. So I will give a shout out to Arizona and our strong science programs. But what I really loved hearing, I'm on probably more on the diplomacy side, on the negotiating side of water. Our organization brings water into Arizona to about 6 million people and 12 tribes. and working with tribes and with cities and with industry and countries, with Mexico and Canada and different jobs. This has become so important. I just want to say I really appreciated the comments. Dr. Odongo, I loved when you said capacity building. Like, to me, science is what brings trust. When you can trust information, you can build that trust between each other. A number of you talked about building gaps, being able to reach out from our silos, to reach into different groups. We do that with science, with information that is trusted across borders. So that whether it's the transboundary issues between the United States and Mexico, whether it's the Nile in 11 countries, and I've seen so many people speak from that area, and I don't even know how you've managed to hold together a group. If Dr. Odongo, did you say you were the 11th leader of that group? Was that right? I think that's incredible to hold that kind of diplomacy and hold that group together. But I just want to say, like, you can tell that we're all here to make a positive difference. In my job, in my different jobs that I've had, it's been relying on those modelers, on that science that's been brought to the table. It's been finding ways to allow open access to that information in real time so people trust the information. It's been identifying those gaps I know was mentioned. Like, how do you find the gaps and fill those gaps? How do you take in people from all different areas of your communities so that there's trust in the information that you fill those gaps with? Incredible group here today. We're proud to be a partner here at our organization and part of the North American network. I really appreciate hearing from you all. I think we should all be very proud. Just as far as next time or another meeting of this group, I'd love to hear about some of your victories. I think every person on this panel could talk about their victories, whether it was in one day getting, that information you needed published or across or to the right person, or whether it was a larger victory about your transboundary river or the groundwater underneath it and how that is managed. I think we would all have those stories to tell. But thank you for letting us be a part of this, a real honor. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Brenda, for wrapping us out today. Before we leave, we would like to do a screenshot, and that will be used like on our social media and in the summary report that we'll share with everyone afterwards. So if you don't want your face included, that's perfectly fine. Jessie is going to be making sure she tries to capture everyone, and then we'll do a collage, So great to see some of you turning your cameras on. We'll just take a moment to have some screenshots. I see people joining. It's so nice to see everyone. Boniface. Okay, I didn't see the participants group. Wonderful. Thank you all. Okay, so Jessie, we'll let you take a few shots of us. Tell me when we can wrap up, Jessie.
We're all good.
Okay, fantastic. So one last thing before we go. I am just going to put up one more slide. As we leave, we want to invite you all to fill out a small exit survey. Oops, really not successful on the Zoom today. Use your phone and that'll take you to this short exit survey. It should just take you a couple of minutes. And then this really contributes to how we design events and how we understand what we're doing well and what we can do better down the road. So we really appreciate your thoughts. From me, I'll just say thank you so much. It's been a wonderful pleasure to hear from so many of you. I think we could probably spend the entire day with this program, digging into so many people's different experience and knowledge. So huge thank you. We really invite you to continue to interact and engage with the Women in Water Diplomacy Network and our various partners. Rosario, do you want to have the last word?
The wisdom words, you mean? I'm not drinking anything. Otherwise, I would share my last drops of wine or beer or whatever. But I just wanted to say thank you. I feel very honored, very touched, really, by what we have heard today. And as you said, we can be here forever talking about our experiences. But I want to retake something of what Brenda mentioned. We need to talk about our victories too. We need to show our generations of women, young women, coming, and learning from us and following us, and lots of you, of course. So we need to share how that is done. Between Mexico and the US, for the first time in history, we have women leading the International Boundary and Water Commission from both sides of the border. That's unique. So we're breaking those barriers. We are showing that we can do things better, or even, or equally good. And I wanted just to mention 2 words I think that I've heard today. One is communication and the other one is trust. So I think that we are, as women, we are very good at building trust. And I think that's it, because we are better at building or accepting vulnerabilities. We have that in our ADN. ADN, I translated that from Spanish. So it's, what is ADN? I'm just mixing here English and Spanish, but you know what I meant. I think we're much better at building trust because we are better at accepting vulnerabilities. So that's an advantage that we have, and that helps a lot on transboundary level, helps a lot in water diplomacy. So we need to embrace that we have in our blood. And from that, I just want to thank you, Elizabeth, and all the team and the panelists for being here with us today. I'm really looking forward to the next one. Thank you.
Bye, everyone. Thank you so much. We'll end the recording there. And we'd like to leave our line open just for a moment as people leave.